A Course in Miracles, the shorthand notes of Helen Schucman, unproofed first draft. There's a lot of stuff that's just Helen, or just Helen material, Helen writing, not the spirit being author of A Course in Miracles. So I'm just going to look at it here. Not necessarily in which all of whether he is or not depends on a three-way readiness. I'm always ready. The whole problem is that they threw it away. You both have an identity problem, which makes you unstable. So none of this is part of the book. Forget the interval of darkness and be what you were. Other things here. The abandonment of guilt. Fear of God's abandonment as justice. So none of this is the book. There is a sentence in the book says God's justice warrants gratitude, not fear. So I'll just make a comment on that, since this is in the shorthand notes of Helen Schucman here. This thing about fear of God's abandonment as justice. That's not in the book. But the sentence I said is, and what it means is, so, God's justice warrants gratitude, not fear. That's in the book. So the laws of God is talked about in this book. If I violate a law of God, I am going to feel guilt, the emotion of guilt, remorse. So upsetness, anxiety, fear, guilt, doubt, shame, remorse, embarrassment, loneliness, worry, the merest frown, all the negative emotions that are mentioned in A Course in Miracles, ACIM, and they're all mentioned at some point or another. Well, many of the negative emotions are mentioned at some point in A Course in Miracles. And if I violate a law of God, if I do something that is not the law of God, or if anyone does anything that is not the will of God, you, or anybody else will feel some degree of guilt, doubt, shame, remorse, anxiety, fear, loneliness, worry, whatever the negative emotion is. So that is, but I should be grateful for that. So God's justice is making me feel that way, a negative emotion, because of something I thought, said, or did that was not his will. And then I should be grateful for that feeling so that I can change, or anyone can change, so that I don't think that way, talk that way, or physically do things that way, act that way. That's what it means when it says in ACIM, God's justice warrants gratitude, not fear. As far as this personal stuff here, for Helen, by Helen, this is just Helen writing, not the author of ACIM through automatic writing. So I do see here, I need the children of light now, and I am calling you to be what you once were and must be again. Apparently, there is no pausing this. Okay, so I need the children of light now. That may be somewhat similar to what's actually in the book, maybe in the book. But God himself, the first person of the Trinity, um, wants us all to live holy, joyous, conflict-free, the peace of God, which passes understanding, tranquility, real tranquility. Um, God himself wants us to live in that state of mind with none of those negative emotions, for the world's betterment. Everyone, um, God wants everyone to live up to Jesus' standards of goodness, morality, love, goodness, things of that nature. So, the statement in here, I need the children of light now, as far as living Jesus like, fully developed in terms of peace, joy, goodness, none of those negative emotions. That's the goal of ACIM, for everyone to live that way. I am calling you to be what you once were and must be again. So the idea in ACIM is I, you, and anyone was created perfect in terms of Jesus like, holy, joyous, conflict free, deep sense of peace, none of those negative emotions, created perfect, mentally, emotionally, in every way, created perfect. And we, I, you, anyone created the ego mentality of doubt, fear, remorse, guilt, shame, loneliness, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. That, I, you, or anyone created that. That's not how we were created. We were created perfect mentally, emotionally, in every way, created perfect. And then clouded that perfection up with ego mentality, as talked about in ACIM. So the idea in ACIM is, and I am calling you to be what you once were and must be again. So the perfect mind that we are is in our current mind. I'll say, like, the mind that we have has the perfect mind in terms of the Jesus-like mind of phenomenal sense of peace, joy, goodness, love, care, consideration, all of that, moment to moment, none of those negative emotions. That mind is present, but it's clouded over or covered up by ego mentality of doubt, fear, remorse, anxiety. Whether that ego mentality comes from thought, word, or deed, thought, word, or action. The ego mentality is clouding up, covering up the God mind. That is the idea. The interval has vanished. You who live so close to God must not give way to guilt. Oh, this is more about, just personal things that Helen is writing down. Like, it is not an ACIM. It is not much worth commenting on unless I see something that sort of applies to ACIM. Says here, karmic law demands help the children because you love them and love God. Help the children because you love them and love God. That's the idea, certainly in ACIM, about being of service to others. That is throughout the book in terms of, loving your brother, love for your brother, be of service to your brother in various ways, many, many ways. The book talks about communal friendship, love, goodness, sharing, consideration with others, your brother, people. I mean, like, almost every other every other paragraph, or, on any given page in ACIM, it will talk about oneness with your brother, oneness with others. To me, in the communal sense of, sharing, service, things of that nature, with your brother. Ideas about that are throughout the book. Remember, a miracle is a spark of life. It shines through the darkness and brings in the light. I mean, that's I do not believe that's exactly in the book, but the idea, one of the ideas in the book about the spark. Everyone has the spark of the light of real Jesus-like mentality, or real high-minded goodness in terms of phenomenal sense of peace and joy. God himself is holy, joyous, conflict-free, and, with a tremendous reality of tranquility, the peace of God, which passes understanding. So God himself has that. So we all have a spark of that being created by God. We all have a spark of that high-minded mentality in terms of phenomenal sense of peace, joy, none of those negative emotions. And then the goal is to grow that spark into a flame. The book talk doesn't use the word flame, I do not believe, but it might, I don't know. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. But from a spark of that type of reality, phenomenal sense of love, joy, peace, goodness, none of those negative emotions, from a spark of that to the fullness of that in terms of however that that would be described, the fullness of that, living it, shining in great awareness might be sort of an idea in ACIM. More personal notes here. Helen writing stuff down. So here's a sentence. There is no real difference between an instant and eternity. Well, the eternal now is certainly a topic in this book. To me, ACIM certainly talks about that a lot, or some. And, the whole idea of living timelessly is living Jesus-like, specifically how Jesus lived after his baptism when he had the full God mind. And so then living in the full God mind for each of us, again, a phenomenal sense of peace, joy, goodness, love, care, consideration, none of those negative emotions whatsoever. No doubt, fear, remorse, anxiety, not the slightest little bit of any of those emotions whatsoever, moment to moment. That is living timelessly. So, and then moment to moment, that's how one lives in terms of living eternally. So that's the goal, to live in the eternal now, in the moment, and moment to moment, as moments come to the next moment, living eternally that way. This is in the book. There is no order in miracles because they are always maximal expressions of love. So that is in the book. This is Helen's notes, and it looks a lot like just Helen writing things down. Helen, not the spirit being who wrote through Helen, just Helen writing things down. However, that sentence is in the book, so whether it's written down again, I don't know. It doesn't matter. So I'll say something about that. There is no order in miracles because they are always maximal expressions of love. I believe the expression in ACIM is there is no order of difficulty in miracles. That might be coming up, but or might have already been said in these notes. But well, there's no order of miracles. Simply, there's different ideas about that. Certainly, for Jesus of Nazareth, it was just as easy, shall I say, to raise Lazarus from the dead as it was to turn water into wine. Like, there was no order of difficulty in miracles in terms of Jesus of Nazareth. Whatever is the will of God, there's no order of difficulty in them. Not one is not more difficult than another. That would be one thing to say about it. No order in miracles. Just that anything, thought, word, or action that's filled with nothing but love, joy, peace, goodness, strength, tenderness, none of those negative emotions. If whatever is filled with that love, joy, peace, goodness, etc., is a miracle. Thought, word, or action, moment to moment, by anyone. Those are miracles to me. They are always maximal expressions of love. So, and the word maximal here is capitalized. So, that which is, you know, truly, tremendously joyous, phenomenal sense of peace, goodness, care, love, consideration, all of that, all those types of ideas, and any and all of those types of ideas, and other words to express those ideas. But that makes a moment, thought, word, or action, a moment, thought, word, or action, a maximal expression of love. If it's filled with joy, peace, goodness, strength, vitality, exuberance, etc., in terms of those ideas. You did make so. You practically well, you have a little biblical reference in here. It's not an ACIM. Helen writing something, and I said myself that greater love no man has, and then it just kind of tails off there. But certainly this is not ACIM, but I do believe Jesus said at the time during his public mission, he said, no man has greater gift to give than this, to give his life for his friends. I do believe in that biblical sentence. So Jesus himself did surrender his life for the greater good. It was God's will that he be crucified and die. And so he went through with that plan, God's plan. He went through with that. So he did give that type of offering. I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. Nothing in the will of God is a sacrifice, but it was a deed, an offering. He did do that. He allowed himself to be killed. So as far as that sentence in the Bible, but that sentence and that idea is not in ACIM. Okay, more just Helen writing things down here. Was capital WAS a sign of superhuman will, totally misdirected? The word superhuman does not appear in ACIM. All right, so this is probably an ACIM here. The purpose of this course is integration. I told you you cannot use it right until you have taken it. As long as your identification vacillates, you cannot accept the gift that belongs to you. You are still taking it and throwing it away. You do not yet know its healing power. After you have passed the course, you will take it and keep it and use it. That is the final exam, which you will have no trouble in passing. Midterm marks are not entered on the permanent record. Yeah, that last sentence definitely is not in the book, I'm pretty sure. But I mean, some of this here, so I'll just comment on it. The purpose of this course is integration. So that's in the book. I don't know if that sentence verbatim is in the book, but the idea is in the book about integrating the mind, having nothing but the God mind of phenomenal sense of peace, joy, goodness, love, care, consideration, all that and more, in terms of the perfection of the mind, tenderness, love, moment to moment, thought, word, and action, the integration of the mind. And that means that the ego mind is undone, or the energy of the ego mind is undone into the energy of the God mind. I would put it that way. It doesn't matter how that idea is expressed. It getting rid of the ego mind, not having any ego mind in terms of those negative emotions, doubt, fear, remorse, anxiety, guilt, shame, loneliness, worry, etc., etc. Any of them. There should be none of them present at any moment. So that's integration. When the mind is fully the God mind, not a shred of doubt or uncertainty. None of it. Zero. That is the God mind. That's a fully integrated mind. That's what I would say. I told you you cannot use it right until you have taken it, as far as the course goes. So, I mean, it is a course in miracles, and it has a text, it has lessons, it has a manual, a teacher's manual is what that's called. The manual is a teacher's manual. Then it has 2 supplements. So that's the entire book. And understanding the message in the book does take study of the book, reading the entire book, and studying the entire book. I would say that's a fair statement about the book ACIM. So it can't be used right until it has been taken, until it's been read and studied diligently. That's a fair statement about the book itself, the ideas in the book, taking a course. As long as your identification vacillates, you cannot accept the gift that belongs to you. Well, that's not in ACIM, I don't think, but we certainly, IU, anyone doesn't want identification vacillation, which means going back and forth between the God mind and the ego mind. So being in real tranquility, not relaxation. Tranquility is not relaxation. Don't get the two confused. Tranquility, the peace of God which passes understanding, is tranquility, not relaxation, as the word relaxation is generally understood. But the point here is not to go back and forth between the God mind and the ego mind. So the God mind, peace, joy, love, care, consideration, strength, tenderness, joy, etc., all of it and more, and none of the ego mind, doubt, fear, remorse, anxiety, etc. The goal is not to go back and forth between the two, thought, word, or action. And then as long as your identification vacillates, you cannot accept the gift that belongs to you. So the gift is living in the God mind, the Jesus-like mind, moment to moment. The gift from God himself, the first person of the Trinity, who wants to extend himself as us. God himself wants to extend himself as humans, meaning having every human be, just as joyous and as peaceful as he is, none of those negative emotions. That's the gift that God gives to everyone. You can say it's our inheritance. That's an idea in the book. ACIM talks about God extending himself. So extending in ACIM terms is good. When the book uses the word projection, it's talking about the ego in terms of doubt, fear, remorse, etc. And there are dictionary definitions of the word extension and the word projection, which makes sense in terms of what ACIM is saying about the difference between ideas such as extension and projection. You are still taking it and throwing it away. You do not yet know its healing power. ACIM talks about that, about, take the ideas in ACIM seriously enough to actually live them moment to moment, instead of, not living the ideas in ACIM of always being holy, joyous, conflict-free, deep sense of peace with none of those negative emotions. Take that idea, the ACIM talks about taking that idea seriously enough to live it every moment, moment to moment. That is real healing. The sentence in here is, you do not yet know its healing power, but that is real healing in terms of mental healing. I do not believe that sentence is in the book either. You do not yet know its healing power. Okay, so more here. After you have passed the course, you will take it and keep it and use it. Again, this is not in ACIM itself, but there are daily lessons. The book itself suggests one daily lesson, one day, or more than one day, but stay with one lesson, at least one full day, and then move to the next lesson. And there are 365 lessons in ACIM in terms of the suggestion of ACIM to do one a day. So, it is a course in terms of that which needs to be learned. If it's not already known, if the ideas and the truths in ACIM are not already known by someone, myself, you, anyone, if they're not already known, then the course has to be learned. Passing the course means living Jesus-like, with Jesus-like God consciousness, would be truly passing the course in terms of living the course fully. That would be the goal. Phenomenal sense of peace, joy, goodness, etc., etc. None of those negative emotions. That would be how to live mentally and, with every thought, word, and deed. So after you've passed the course, you will take it and keep it and use it. So once the course is learned, it's taken in, it's kept and used in terms of the ideas and the living of the truths in ACIM every moment to moment for eternity. So it says here, that is the final exam which you will have no trouble in passing. Again, that sentence is not in ACIM. But, that's the idea is, Jesus-like mentality in terms of peace and joy and strength and vitality, all that, none of those negative emotions. That is how to live. That is the only way to live in the eternal truth. Midterm marks are not entered. That sentence is not in ACIM. So more personal things written down here by Helen, and